and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome to our weekly Q&A live stream where tonight we've actually been given quite a bit to talk about, and I'm sure that a lot of you will be looking at the headlines and saying we're linked with players, there's other stories, there's rumours. Yes, that's right, it's a live edition of Celtic Transfer Talk essentially this evening off the back of the video we done earlier on this evening, which you can still go and watch. It's on the channel. I put that up a couple of hours ago. We're here tonight to do a live edition of Celtic Transfer Talk where we do have a couple of things to talk about. So if you have any sort of decorum around you, go down below, hit like and subscribe. I suppose we want to get right into it because I do want to spend 15 minutes or so talking to you guys and getting your questions and giving you my answers after Derby weekend moving forward. So it's time to go and look into these stories because Celtic have been linked with a former goalkeeper who could be about to make a return to the club. Not one of significant scale, one that would be coming in to be a third choice keeper, you would imagine, but might spell the end of Scott Bain's Celtic career. We've also been linked with a young centre-half as well from Serbia, from Red Star Belgrade, who has been dubbed a WONDERKID. So we're going to have a look into both players we've been linked with and the links where they're coming from. So stay with me and we're going to do all that. Big thank you to Paul for being a member for 5 months, by the way, saying Adam Ida having a bad season with 18 goals. Not my book, decent from him. You know me, big Ida fan. Not a great game yesterday, right enough, but I'm big Ida fan. And thank you to Cami for gifting a membership. That is much appreciated, and congrats to whoever has picked up that membership. Thank you, Cami. Right, shall we have a look at the first story then of the evening? Because Ross Doohan, yes, that's right, Ross Doohan, former Celtic youth star, has been considered for a surprise Celtic return. That's what Stephen McGowan is reporting this evening. It was picked up by a few different outlets. In fact, Ross Doohan's Aberdeen contract is about to expire, and apparently Celtic are looking at bringing him back to the club, considering a move for out of contract Ross Doohan this summer, entering the final 12 months of his Parkhead contract. Current third choice keeper Scott Bain could go in search of first team football after the Scottish Cup final, and Doohan features on a list of potential replacements. Listen, this isn't a story that needs to be blown out of proportion or anything like that. It's not a story that is of huge significance. It's not one that really deeply impacts the Celtic squad. However, when you think about this, it makes a lot of sense, like a hell of a lot of sense, to try and get Ross Doohan in to replace Scott Bain and become a third choice keeper. Scott Bain currently is Celtic's number 3 when it comes to goalkeepers. He ticks a box when it comes to homegrown registration. He's one of our 8 players that make up that quota for the club-trained and nation-trained players. But one thing we know about Celtic that is going to be a bit of an issue in the next few years, especially as James Forrest approaches the end of his Celtic career, especially as Callum McGregor gets a wee bit older, is that we definitely need club-trained players coming through to tick those boxes. We need, in fact, 4 club-trained players to tick those boxes when it comes to the Champions League or Europa League in these next few seasons. And they're a lot harder to come by than nation-trained players, because at least with nation-trained players, Celtic can go out and they can sign a Lennon Miller, or they can go and sign a Greg Taylor as they've done in recent years, or they can sign somebody that has been trained at a Kilmarnock, a Motherwell or something like that. However, there's not all that many that are good enough quality coming through the Celtic Academy at this moment in time. And Scott Bain's Celtic career has obviously been he's been here through thick and thin, and he's been here out of loyalty. It's not exactly like he's been a massive part of what Celtic are doing and what Celtic have been. If he wants to move on to try and play football for the remainder of his career, I think that's entirely fair. To replace him with Ross Doohan would be a fantastic bit of business. Now, that's, of course, on the understanding that Ross Doohan wants to be a third-choice keeper. Ross Doohan is effectively going to be handing over any chance or any thought of being a goalkeeper, a first-team keeper, or playing a lot of football for the next 2 or 3 years if he signs with Celtic. He will literally be Scott Bain. But I think that it's far more important that we have a club-trained player in that spot than a nation-trained player, in my opinion. So, you know, I thank Scott Bain, and I appreciate everything that Scott Bain has given to the club, albeit mostly being third-choice keeper. But I think that this would be a really smart move from Celtic just to prioritise what we need moving forward. So, yeah, that is the story that's out there tonight from Stephen McGowan, who said that he has been considered for a return. There's a lot of places running with it now. If you go and search his name on Google and any of the search engines, you will see Doohan has started 17 games for Aberdeen this season, despite being their number 2. We all know that Mitov is the Aberdeen first choice keeper, but Doohan has managed to start 17 games for Aberdeen this season due to multiple injuries that's been picked up by Dimitar Mitov, and Scott Bain apparently in search for first team football this summer. And it's fair play to Scott Bain. I think he's more than entitled to want to leave, to want to move on. He is getting into his 30s now, realising that there's not much left of his footballing career. Does he want to spend that being a third choice and not playing? He's got the easiest job in the world, and don't get me wrong, I would love to be in his position. Third choice at Celtic, picking up that wage, going all over Europe with them, and not even having to bother about playing in a competitive game of football. But as you approach the end, you definitely want to be involved in football. So we'll see what happens with that. I think it'd be a really smart move, and I would very much welcome Ross Doohan back to the club. And I think Celtic should try and make this happen. Now, I don't know what other sorts of offers Ross Doohan will have on the table. I don't know what Celtic will need to compete with wage-wise. The thing is, he will probably have offers elsewhere to go and start and be a keeper week in, week out. So we might need to pay a wee bit above what the asking price would normally be when it comes to wages, but it's Ross Doohan at the end of the day. It's not as if he's going to command, I mean, that's with all due respect to Ross Doohan, he's not going to command a massive wage or anything like that, but Celtic need to make the deal as enticing as they possibly can. I really do think we'll see this happen. I think it would be really, really clever. And it solves one of those problems that we're going to have in the next few years. Before we move on, before we start talking about anything else and getting any more opinions and stuff through the door, Baldy Prick 1888, thank you for renewing your channel membership, sir. It's good to have you back on board. And thank you to Adam, who's been very generous, gifting out 5 memberships to the community. It's always grateful. I'm always grateful, and it's always appreciated when our members gift out to other members and new members, people who have maybe not been part of the membership community. We all have a good laugh in our behind the scenes content. So if you want to become a channel member, you know what to do. And thank you, Adam, for donating those gifted memberships. Right, so I seen somebody saying, I think it was Smell the Glob, are we being linked with anybody else of interest that isn't a crap goalkeeper? Well, yes, another story did come out tonight linking Celtic with a young Serbian centre half. If we go over and have a look at this headline from the Daily Record, Celtic are apparently interested in Veljko Milosavljevic. God almighty, how many times is this going to try? Is this going to take me? Veljko Milosavljevic. I think that's how we're saying it. Pardon me for all the Red Bull advertisement. You'll all be craving one by the time we're done talking about this. Apparently, we're interested in Veljko Milosavljevic. Oh, do you know what? I'm just going to give up. As transfer business jolts into life with Strelic confession and £11 million bonus. Brendan Rodgers is planning beyond a potential treble with a big summer of transfer deals around the corner. If you keep reading it, it says that Celtic are reportedly very interested in Red Star Belgrade defender Veljko Milosavljevic, with the summer transfer window rapidly approaching. And now this one is a bit interesting because if you go and look at the original place where this article comes from, which we will do now because I want to give credit to the original source, if we switch over to this Serbian publication here, which we will need to translate over to English if it will let me do so. Give me a moment, guys. Give me a moment, guys, if my computer wants to cooperate with me. If we do switch over, you'll see this headline from Max Bet Sport, a Serbian publication. Mirko Markovic is the journalist who reports it. Apparently, Milosavljevic is closely watched from a giant from the island. If you read on, Celtic are very interested in the centre half, but the Scottish Giants have received a clear message that the player is not yet for sale. He soon will turn 18. He's been apparently very, very good and stood out in the two massive derbies, by the way. Red Star Belgrade, Partizan Belgrade, one of the biggest derbies in the continent. Apparently, Milosavljevic Milosavljevic has really impressed in these games. Celtic are interested. By the end of the transfer window, it's possible that there will be a turnaround, and there's still teams from England and France which have wrote down the player in their notebooks after only playing 10 games for Red Star Belgrade. So, apparently looked at by a lot of scouts over the continent, according to this story. His rise is apparently evident in the plan of the Serbian champions for next season to be playing at an even higher level. And apparently they won't want to let him leave. Celtic are in there. Celtic are interested. But as I said a minute ago, I think that it's very clear that Ross Doohan is a good possibility. I think Ross Doohan will come in. This story that's breaking tonight about the young centre-half, only 17 years of age, I don't see happening. Number one, I don't know how credible the source is. It's the first time I've ever had to report on a story from Serbia on this channel, I believe. I don't think I've ever had to talk about Celtic signing someone from Serbia. I can't validate the reliability of the source as of yet. Usually I'm got a keen eye for knowing who's a reliable source and who's not. I'm not entirely sure about Mirko Markovic. Also, these are one of these stories that I think we see break sort of every year. There always comes up a kind of young, it's always centre-halves as well. There always comes up a 17, 18-year-old centre-half that Celtic are apparently interested in, that are apparently scouting, and then nothing ever comes from it. And I think this is the case with this one here. Now, I'm not saying the guy doesn't look good. I mean, he's only played apparently 10 times for Belgrade, so it's really hard to judge that. And you think I've seen those 10 games? Absolutely not. But I just think it's one of those ones. I've got a sniff around this that is just a story that is going to amount to nothing, and it might be a name that we hear pop up once or twice again. But I could go back over the last few years on this channel and look at the amount of centre-halves that we have been linked with. I remember big Xavier Mbuyamba, who we were linked with for, I think, 3 or 4 straight windows over at FC Volendam in Holland. I can remember a few other young centre-halves of a similar build, of a similar sort of nature and writing from journalists that we've been linked with. And I think that this is the same thing. I'm seeing a lot of questions. Mark saying, can he head a ball? That would be a start. Can he dominate a box? I think that's the thing that we're all looking for the most in a new centre-half. And going off this image here, he looks like a bit of a unit. So if I look at him via transfer mark, I can't give you a reliable kind of appraisal of the player, because before this evening I had never heard of him, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know much about him. But he stands in at a pretty big presence. I mean, 1.92 meters. What's that again in feet? That's like over 2 feet. Let's see, that's 6'3". 6'3". Obviously valued at very low just now, £600,000. Apparently Transfermarkt have him coming in at, only on the 12 competitive games as it stands for Red Star Belgrade. Played a number of times in the UEFA Youth League over the last few years. Looks as though he does have a bit of a high ceiling. He's been capped for the Serbian under at 19s as well. When I always hear of a centre half coming through the Red Star Belgrade system, the first thing that comes to my mind is Nemanja Vidic. And I think that there's always been a bit of a connection there over the last few years with young Serbian centre-halves. There's been a few in Italy in particular, and people have went, this is the next Vidic, this is the next Vidic. And I think that's something that's always being chased with the Red Star youth team in particular, that people are looking for the next Nemanja Vidic. Listen, if we could get a player that's even 60% of the centre-half that Nemanja Vidic is, who in my opinion is arguably the greatest centre-half in Premier League history, I would be jumping at the opportunity. But the guy is so young. I've never seen him play. Apparently Celtic have been told to bog off anyway if there's any truth in the story. As I said, I don't think this will amount to much, but remember the name, because the name is out there. So that's Ross Doohan tonight and Veljko Milosavljevic, who have been linked with us. We'll see where it all goes. And Scott Bain, it's looking like Scott Bain's Celtic career could be over. So those are the 3 main takeaways from tonight. I'm sure there'll be a lot of heartbroken Bainiacs out there hearing this news. But as I say at the end of all these, at this point of the season, rumours are always interesting because a lot of them amount to nothing. I know that from doing this for 9 years on YouTube now. I know how to sniff out what could be leading to something and what could be leading to nothing. But it always gives you a sort of indication as to what the club are looking for. And I think that a centre-half was always one we were going to be interested in anyway. I don't necessarily think that'll be a 17-year-old centre-half, though. I don't think the club are in any sort of position to be putting a 17-year-old into that area right now. I think we're needing known quality, known experience, an upgrade on what we have. And I don't think a 17-year-old from Serbia is exactly that right now. Not saying he couldn't be, just don't think he's exactly that right now. So I don't think he'd be a priority in this window. Right, let's get on to your questions and such for the next 15 minutes. I would like to hear from you guys and what you've got to say. Very quickly, I didn't get to say it again, but thank you to Adam for another 5 gifted memberships. Absolutely. Just as a lot of the old gifted memberships are about to expire, we have a new group coming in. Welcome to the club. Anybody who's been gifted memberships tonight, you've got a big thank you to give to Adam and Cami, who have gifted 11 between them. Thank you very much, Adam. Right. Let's get some questions. Nathan is in saying, I think if we sign a centre half, it'll be one more than likely. It'll be one to more than likely start. Yeah, I agree. That's literally effectively what I was saying a moment ago. I think that if it's somebody coming in, it's somebody that's going to be an upgrade on Austin Trusty or Liam Scales. And I think that after yesterday, it's very clear that we do need somebody who's going to be an upgrade on Austin Trusty or Liam Scales. I think that'll be the priority when it comes to the centre-half position in this window. Of course, when you sign younger players, there is options for them. I just think that if this boy is getting linked to Celtic, it'll be one that we hear about for another few windows, and it won't be something that's triggered in this window, to say the least. I wonder if Bruni will sign Bain. Well, you never know. Somebody will need, I'd imagine that Bain will want a decent bit of money. Like I don't think that he's going to chuck it at Celtic to play for pennies elsewhere. I think that he'll want to go somewhere that can at least, I don't know, just at least get some form of the money back. He's never going to get what he's getting at Celtic. That's just fact. I don't think he's going to get what he's getting at Celtic. Unless he ends up with a move to America or Saudi Arabia or something like that. But I would be stunned. I mean, who's scouting him? He's not playing. That would be bizarre. But who knows? Who knows? 50 million for Bain. That would be a good price, to say the least. I'd be very happy with that. Need a good replacement for Maeda in the summer. Hey, listen, we're not manifesting any Maeda exits, right? However, it would be very reassuring if he'd hurry up and put pen to paper on a new contract. Thanks, Dyson. Do that. The longer you do it, the nervier I'm going to get. So we'll wait and see. Jason, why hasn't Navrowski been given a chance? Played good in the derby. Quite confusing. The whole situation's been confusing. It's nothing new. Jace, it's been going on since he arrived almost 2 full years ago. The Navrowski situation is one that I don't think we'll ever properly have an answer for. Only Brendan Rodgers knows, and he's never really spoken about it. So when Navrowski leaves, his first interview post-Celtic will be very interesting. I want to see if he reveals any sort of details or facts about what's gone on in the last 2 years and why he's not been played or chosen when, unless desperately needed, after spending about 5 million quid on him. Let's see what else. The Polish guy from Southampton is a 6 million buyer. Yeah, seen that. Is it? It's not Bednarek, is it? No, not Bednarek. I know who you're talking about. I think there'll be a few teams sniffing around his name, to be quite fair. A couple of donations to go over. Thank you very much to Connor for the £2, saying shit, Michael or Sinisalo for the cup final. I think it will be Schmeichel. I think it will be. And listen, I'm going to say Schmeichel. Now, part of me wants to say Sinisalo because I feel like he should be rewarded for his service recently. But at the end of the day, the way that I look at it is that Schmeichel is at the end. For all you never know how next season is going to go. This could be Schmeichel's last ever final. For all you know, Celtic might not make it to any finals next year. And Vinny Sinisalo is very clearly going to have a future at Celtic. I think he's proven to a lot of people that he can be trusted as perhaps Celtic's next number one. And he's going to play in a lot of finals. He's going to win a lot of trophies with Celtic. So I would go with Schmeichel. You know, he's near the end. He's been a great servant since coming here. It was unfortunate he got injured. If he's fit, I think it will be Casper. Thank you to Paul. Very generous. Thank you for the 10. Saying any news on Alistair Johnson. The news on Alistair Johnson is pretty simple. He's managing this hip injection. There was an infection there, according to the manager, that needed tackled via injection. That's been done. Now, he will be able to play eventually, but it's about managing him properly and making sure he's available for the final. So I think we'll see Johnston very sparingly between now and the end of the season. And when I say very sparingly, I think that he might make an appearance on Trophy Day and then come in for the final. I think we're probably going to see Anthony Ralston start the next couple of games for Celtic. I think that might be what happens. But just keep an eye out to see what Brendan Rodgers says on Friday. For all we know, the recovery from this injection could be a lot quicker than what was originally anticipated. So that's all I can really say on it just now, Paul. But thank you for the donation. And thank you to Davey as well for the 79 pence. All your donations are greatly appreciated. So thank you. It keeps me doing this as a job. So I appreciate that. Mark saying that Sinisalo should be played in both cups next season. Yep, I would agree. I 100% stand with that, especially with it being Schmeichel's last season. Now, I get it. Schmeichel wants to play as much as possible, and he's good enough to be playing as much as possible. But I think that it's a really smart idea to phase Sinisalo in as much as we can, get him prepared. I'm really happy with the idea of Sinisalo being the next number one. I've seen enough so far to be fine with it. And I think phasing him in would be really, really smart, and especially in big pressure situations, because that's the one thing Sinisalo's not had yet. I know he's played in a couple of derbies. People go, right, he's played in derbies. He's played in derbies that don't have a lot on the line. What Sinisalo really needs to pass the eye test is big pressure games. And we won't have that until he's playing in a cup semi-final or a cup final. Let him do that next year, and then we'll phase him in. Either that, or he's coming in from the cold when Schmeichel does retire. So I agree with you, Mark. I think that he should start in both cup competitions next year as well. What about Stephen Welsh? Stephen Welsh will most likely depart Celtic this summer. No doubt in my mind about that. I think Stephen Welsh's Celtic career is over. I don't know how I've not been keeping up with how he's doing in Belgium. I'm not going to lie. I've not had a look into it at all. I've not seen anything about it. So I couldn't tell you, but I think he'll be off on a permanent basis when he returns. Unless we really, the only way he stays is if we really struggle to have that 4-player criteria filled in. But think about it already. When it comes to club trained players, we'll have McGregor, we'll have Forrest, we're probably now going to have Ross Doohan, and I think you've got to bring somebody up rather than give it to Welsh again, to be quite honest. So yeah, I think that Stephen Welsh will be off finally. So we'll wait and see. Lagerbielke to make a comeback. Well, there is stories coming out about and Kieran Tierney, of course. Yes, Kieran Tierney, there's your 4. Bang. God, I forgot about Kieran Tierney. Jesus. That's what happens when you go live, ladies and gentlemen. You forget things. Lagerbielke make a comeback. I doubt it. I really do. But there is stories coming out that maybe his move to Holland might not happen due to financial situations. So we'll just need to wait and see. I don't see him making a comeback at Celtic. I think his Celtic career is as good as over as well. And I mean that with, once again, all due respect to him, to be quite honest. Should get rid of Holm, Tillio, and Lagerbielke. Well, Odenholm isn't back until January anyway, so Odenholm's on the back burners at the minute. We don't really need to think about him. So Tillio and Lagerbielke, yeah, I assume both of them will leave. I think Tillio's doing okay at the minute, in fact, over in Australia. And I've seen people going, oh, we should give him a chance. Sometimes you just got to... Listen, I feel bad about that whole situation. But come on, sometimes you just got to rip the bandage off. And do you know what happened? Do you know what really annoys me about situations like that? And I mean this, once again, I feel like I'm using this phrase a lot recently. With all due respect to Marco Tillio, who I would love to see somehow smash it up at Celtic, right? If we were to keep him in the squad and we were to give him a chance, you know what's going to happen. We're going to get to that first derby at Ibrox next year. We're going to have a mini injury crisis, and the same people going on and should be given a chance will be the ones going, look at the state of that bench. Marco Tillio's on that bench. That's what happens. It's the nature of the beast. So listen, I think he'll move on. I think that's necessarily, I just think that's what's going to happen. Yeah. Disappointed that Dyson didn't have the kids in Scotland. Would have loved the future Scotland players. Well, listen, if he's here long enough, they might get citizenship. Who knows? And when Alistair brings up Lennon Miller, it's actually quite interesting to think about that Celtic will have a really good lineup of young players if they make the right signings. Not young players, of homegrown players. So you think about it, as I've said, it looks as though the 4 club-trained players are already done with. We know it'll be McGregor, Tierney, Forrest, and Doohan. Good. Cracking 4 to have, one being a third choice keeper. Good situation. You then go to nation-trained players. There's a good chance Taylor might stay. There's a good chance we might sign Lennon Miller. Tony Ralston, I don't imagine is going to go anywhere. So he's got to be there as well. And then you've got a lot of the younger boys. We're in a good position, I think. That might be the strongest 8 homegrown players we've had in this kind of modern age of football where the homegrown thing is dying and the Scotland as a nation, as Scotland as a nation aren't developing good enough players, I think that might be the best 8 that we've had in a long time. So yeah, we just need to wait and see. Do you think that Kennedy will ever become the manager once Rodgers leaves? The guy stuck with us through good and bad times, even when the fans were shouting for him to leave with Lennon. I'm saving myself for when the time comes, but I have alluded to it on this channel many a times. There is one guy out there who should be deserving more than anybody of that first interview and that first opportunity, and his name is John Kennedy. But listen, that's a topic for another day, and I think it's circumstantial. To tell you the truth, I think it's circumstantial. Give us a 3-2-1, Ryan, please. You're missing them. I've made sure editing recently has been good. 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, if Taylor leaves, bring in Doig. We need to let Josh Doig go. People are still banging on about Doig. He's not that good. There was a time and a place. Celtic didn't do it. We need to let Doig go. Thank you, Aidan, for the donation, mate. It's very much appreciated. Scott Bain to St. Rochs. Make it happen. Keep him as part of the family, you know. St. Rochs are the mini Celtic. Keep him as part of the family. Let's see. Well, how long have we got left? A few more minutes. Get your questions in. We've got about 5 more minutes before I go off the air, and we'll get going after that. Mark, I thought Kenny showed some definite natural instincts against Rangers and should get some game time now. If there's any games for him to get game time, it's the next 3. And I think I would like to see him come off the bench in all 3, if possible. Of course, cup final is a completely different situation. But if there's any time for any young lads to get a run out now, it's the 3 league games. Of course, we want to win all 3 and finish with the maximum amount of points we can, but put ourselves in a position where we can make subs late on. Yeah, I would like to see a wee bit more of Kenny in those 3 kind of in those 3 games. Noah, good evening, Ryan. Why such a big fan of the Rockets? Personally, a Cavs man myself. It's just as simple as this. When I got into basketball in 2012, 2013, I had to pick a team. I had to pick a player that I wanted to be my guy. I picked James Harden. That's it. That is literally when I first got into basketball. I was like, I'm going to pick the Bulls because I loved Derrick Rose, and the Bulls were obviously like Michael Jordan, whatever. And then I watched it for like 2 weeks, and I was like, I fucking love James Harden. So that's why they're my team. That's why they're my team. That's as simple as that. And I've been loyal to them. I've got a soft spot for the 76ers because I'm a Philly guy. I love Philly, but yeah, it's Houston. I've stayed loyal to them. I've stayed loyal to them. We should have signed Hickey. We really should have. I think that was a big miss. But you know, you win some, you lose some. More of a Cardinal Tagley man myself, Donny Tiny Hands, or Zuppy, one of the 2. Zuppy or Tagley for me personally. Let's get a few more questions in about the Celtic. I think it should be Yang, Edith, and Forrest next game. Try and get him in at his goal. Try and get him his goal. And Yang looked good yesterday. Yeah, I wouldn't be against it. These are 3 games. We've got nothing to lose. You know, it could be any combination of forwards. I think for Celtic in this next run of games. But there is a balance you've got to strike. You can't just throw everybody out to the side and keep them cold when there's a cup final coming up as well. So we've always got to keep that in mind. It's very easy to go, right, let's start Kenny and let's start Yang and let's start such and such. We've got a cup final on the horizon. You don't want to disrupt any sort of charisma. It's not the word. Chemistry. You know, you've got to balance it. And I trust Brendan Rodgers to get that balance right because he's been here how many times as Celtic boss. He knows what he's doing. So I'll see what happens. Let's see. A few more. Would you want Cummins to start? No point. He's away. Why should we? If he's not committing to Celtic, he shouldn't be playing for Celtic. No, I don't really. If he's away, he's gone. So I don't have any desire to see Cummins start in the next few games. Unless he's got a change of heart and he wants to stay at Celtic, then yeah, I would be fine with it. Oh God Almighty! Sad that the back 5 of Baniak, Tony Ralves, Welsh, Scales, and Taylor is slowly falling to pieces. Oh, we should have fucking street parties for that. Anybody who's seen like the VE Day coverage today and they're talking about the old street parties? We should have street parties like that when that back 5 is gone. Do you feel we have too many players in the squad who are good enough to be the squad players and not good enough to be real competition to start in 11 players. Yeah, I agree 100%. It's trying, once again, not to overuse the word balance. A team like Celtic, it's hard to accomplish the ideal situation. It's not a video game at the end of the day. It's not easy to attract football players to the Scottish League and at Celtic if they're not going to be starting every week. And that's just a harsh reality of where we're at. So that probably turns players off if they're not getting strict and if they're not getting strictly told that they're going to be playing a lot. It's probably not an ideal situation coming here for a lot of players. And that's as simple as that, I think. Jamie Vardy, yes or no? Nah, no for me. No for me. I've always been a huge Vardy fan, but no, I don't think so. And let's finish off with one more. Why are we bringing back Doohan? Just because of Bain leaving? Because Bain's leaving, because he's a third choice keeper, and because he ticks the club grown criteria. So yeah, quick recap. Ross Doohan looks as though he could be returning to Celtic. Looks as though Scott Bain is away, and Celtic are being linked with a young Serbian centre half by the name of, here we go, Veljko Milosavljevic. Thank you for tuning in tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It has been a pleasure as always. Thank you to everybody who's donated and such tonight. Cammy with the membership gifting, Adam with the 10 memberships as well, Connor, Paul, Davey, and Aidan. I love you guys. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time. We're doing one of the live streams. Members will be live through the week as well. So until then, take care of yourself, and I'll see you all next time.